So I have listed 6 over here, in which that how you guys can develop method in for analysis of particular samples. So one is to by studying the sample, okay, then you can establish your method goals. The third will be your reference. Okay, in this case, it's written as literature review, in which is there any method that you can refer to, and after you have find all of the literature or references, you have to select an approach. Okay, once you selected, then we go to the optimizing. Meaning optimizing is you want to make sure that method that you copy, okay, or that you choose from the reference is suitable for you. Suitable for you meaning that it is suitable for your sample, for your facilities, which is the lab that you are doing it, okay, because you are not going to do in other lab. You have to do it in, let's say you are working in your working lab, or if you are doing research in the lab that you are doing research. So it has to be feasible to be done, and then finally you can say that this method is how to say complete, so you can finalize. So first step is to study the sample. So collection of this available data about the sample, what is the sample composition. So you have to know like the sample, if it's an organic compound, so in which functional group does it belongs, whether it's carboxylic acid or alcohol, and then the handling and storage. This is also needed because for safety purposes, especially, okay, let's say the sample needs to be stored in low temperature because it is highly volatile. So you need to know beforehand. And the physical properties like the flash point, okay, whether if it hits certain temperature, it can combust, okay, by itself. So their chemical properties, whether it is compatible with other materials or not, reaction with environment, and how it will react with the instrument or apparatus that you are going to use, and some other properties. So all of these are normally can be referred through the chemical compound MSDS, okay, which is the material safety data sheet. Okay, if you go into working later on, they will have this what you call as OSHA, the safety hazard something, I forgot already, but it involved to make sure that all of the labs, okay, they must have this file of SDS, the safety data sheet of all chemicals that is available in the lab, so that if anything happen, okay, let's say anything happen, if there is chemical spillage or there could be fire, okay, involving that particular chemical. So you can refer to this SDS, the safety data sheet, to see what kind of, let's say if there is a fire involving a chemical, for example, you have to refer to the SDS to know which fire extinguisher type, okay, which is suitable. If you just simply, let's say, see a fire, first thing in mind, say, oh, throw some water to it. But some chemical, when you give water, it will start to react more violently. Okay, so that's why you need to know the sample beforehand, okay, in terms of doing method development. Okay, and this is mainly for known compound, because in pharmaceutical, okay, pharmaceutical, when you are doing pharmaceutical analysis, the compound are mostly known. Okay, you are not doing like synthesizing new compound or extracting from plant. Most of the time, the formulation are already there. Okay, because in Malaysia, mostly the drugs are generic, meaning that all the drugs are already patented in other countries. So if we are the innovator, you are working an innovator company, so that would be different because you are creating a new formulation or a new drug, okay, new API. So that would be different because you need to know about the sample first. So there could be steps beforehand in which you have to analyze and elucidate the structure, for example, to know the properties. Otherwise, you already know the name, you just refer to the SDS, what is the safety precaution that you have to take. And then the method goals. This one, you have to know what is the purpose of doing the analysis itself. Okay, either you want to detect, you want to quantitate, you want to check purity, or just to characterize, or in fact, if you want to purify. So this can have different approach. Okay, if you just want to detect, then just go for qualitative. Okay, no need to go until quantitative. Okay, but if you want to know the exact amount, like purity or to quantitate, then you have to do quantitative analysis. Then after that, next step, okay, like you're doing research, you have to do literature review. But in pharmaceutical analysis, I would suggest the first thing that you do is to refer to pharmacopoeia, okay, especially with active pharmaceutical ingredient. So always refer to pharmacopoeia first, like USP and BP. But the thing is, these two requires a subscription, meaning that you have to purchase annually, and they will provide you with the like very thick book. Okay, like I think in one series, because it involves all of the chemicals from A until Z. Okay, normally book one will be from chemical A until chemical D, for example, and it will continues. But they will also provide with online database, and the yearly subscription is quite expensive. But for you guys, you can try to check for previous version, meaning that the year that meaning the pharmacopoeia is not current, it's not like 2021. It will be 2017, 2018, for example. That will be available online for free. Or another option is you can also refer to Japanese pharmacopoeia. So that one is also free. You can refer to the current version and also free. So then, other than that, you can also refer to regulatory bodies, okay, or regulatory agency like FDA, Food and Drug Agency in the US, or in Malaysia, which is the NPRA, National Pharmaceutical Regulatory Agency. Okay, they will provide I think, in fact, they will also have guideline on what is allowed, what is not allowed. Okay, and let's say what is the limit of certain parameters, for example, for your test. So that has to be taken into account as well. You also have USDA, and then you can also refer to publication, okay, from articles in journals. Okay, that one also can be used as reference. Okay, all of this is considered to be what you call as standard method. Okay, meaning like from pharmacopoeia, the regulatory agencies publish articles that can be considered as standard, meaning it has been widely tested and proved to be the result are proven to be accurate and so on. Another way to do is you can also try to what you call that, use a non-standard method, meaning you don't want to refer to any of this. You feel that I have a new way of doing the analysis, so that can also be done, but the method has to be fully validated, okay, which we'll cover in a minute. So here, select an approach. So first, if you choose a standard method, which I have mentioned earlier, all those pharmacopoeia, the published articles, uh, regulatory bodies, so that is considered to be standard method. But you can also use non-standard, meaning method that you start from scratch. Or another way is you meet halfway of the standard method. You follow the standard method, but then you want to make some modification to it. Okay, let's say the standard method asks you to use ethanol, for example. You follow everything else, but you just want to change the solvent to methanol. So that is by changing something you already considered to be not following exactly as the standard method. After that, optimize. Okay, optimizing. So when doing the how to say the test itself, you are most definitely going to do some try and error. Okay, once you selected from step number 4, you are going to do some run. Okay, test run with the test, with the sample, and from here you will be able to identify the problems that you encounter while doing the testing itself. Okay, so here you will able to identify which parameters will be most important. Okay, this is what we call as critical parameters. Okay, in which that if you change the critical parameters, you will not get the result. So this is very, very important for you to identify which parameters is very critical. And also there is non-critical parameters, meaning that if you change it a little bit, you modify it a little bit, it doesn't change the result obtained. So for example, this is the HPLC, okay, standard HPLC test parameters. So this is the high performance liquid chromatography. Okay, there are several stacking of instrument over here. So normally in our lab we have two, only this one and this one. Here there could be another set of detector, for example. So what we have here, uh, this is where the solvent, okay, is placed. This is what we call as mobile phase, and the pump is inside here. Okay, because you are going to push all of the solvent through the machine, through the instrument, whereby the sample, this woman over here is putting the sample inside, and there is a needle that is going to inject and take the sample and push it through the system. Okay, and the detector could be this one or this one. Okay, depending on the type of the HPLC. So what we have here is things that you can change and you can how to say set. Okay, it's like the variables. The first one is columns. So in HPLC, you need to have a column. So inside the column will be the silica gel, silica packing that will do the separation job. So this is where the separation will happen. Normally, it will be placed inside here. So this cover can be opened. So you can place the column. So the column looks like a pen, a very long pen. Okay. The diameter is also quite the same. So for example, over here, this is the brand, okay, Thermo Scientific, AccuCore. Okay, there are many other like Phenomenix, Luna, you have Agilent. So different company came up with different brands of column. And then you have this 2.6 micrometer. This is the size of the packing of the silica. So this is bigger. The one we have below is 1.7, which is smaller. And you have 2.1 times 100 mm. So this is the diameter. 2.1 times 100. 100 is the length. So there is 10 cm. 10 cm is considered to be a short column. The longest is, I believe, is 25. Okay, I'm used to using 25 cm. Okay, you also have 10, and the shortest that I have used is 5 cm. Okay, in fact, there is one that is the length of 1 cm, but that one is you have to use the ultra performance liquid chromatography UPLC, which is a very powerful machine compared to normal HPLC. So this can also be changed. So you have thermoscientific AcuCore. The second one is thermoscientific synchronous. So this one have different parameters, different pore size and different types of silica gel. This is AQ, which is the type for this column, and you have C18. C18 is actually referring to the number of carbon, in this case 18 carbon attaching to the silica. You also have carbon 8. So the longer the carbon chain, okay, the more non-polar it is. Okay, the more non-polar it is, because your sample and your solvent is polar. So the column must be non-polar so that it is able to separate. Okay, so these two you can change. Okay, imagine there are many other types of brand. Okay, so different columns will give out slightly different result. Okay, especially in terms of the retention time. Okay, the time taken for your sample peaks to come out. And then eluents, which is the mobile phase, can also be changed. Okay, you have acetonitrile, methanol, or could be a mixture of both. So this depends. This depends on the preference that you are using. Okay, gradient is the mixture of the mobile phase that you are using throughout the testing itself. Flow rate, okay, how fast you want this mobile phase to be pumped into the instrument and push the sample through the column and through the detector. So it can be 0.8 ml for column 1, but if you are using column number 2, then you have to how to say, make it less. Okay, the volume 0.4 ml per minute. Okay, or maybe if you feel that you want to increase the rate, also can. And then the pressure can be set, temperature for the column, the injection volume, how much you are going to take the sample and push into the system. So it could be 1 microliter or maybe 2 microliter. So this depends on the references, which is mainly pharmacopoeia. So if you are using pharmacopoeia, it will mention in very great detail of what column to use, what solvent to use. All of this will be stated. And the detection wavelength. Okay, wavelength, normally they will have a UV detector as well. So it will include what wavelength for you to use to detect that particular active ingredient, for example. And these are the adjustment range. So how much is allowed for you to change? Let's say from here, the length is 10 mm and the allowable change is plus minus 70%. So 70% from 100 mm would be 70. So you can either go plus 7 or minus 7. That means the column length range can be from 3 cm up to 17 cm. Okay, column internal diameter would be this one. This one, the diameter 2.1. So you can plus minus 25%. Okay, so these are all the allowable changes in which that you can do according to United States Pharmacopoeia, USP, okay, which you can refer in general chapter 621. So this is general for all method you are referring, but if you are referring USP, if you are using other sources like BP, British Pharmacopoeia, these allowable changes values could be different. Okay, so depending on the reference that you are using. And finally, once you confirm with the method, you are happy with the result that you obtain, okay, because you have to do the test run several times. You cannot just do once, you get result, you happy, you said, oh, this method is finalized. You have to make sure that that result you obtain can be repeated. Okay, at least try to repeat 2-3 times to make sure that you get the same result. Okay. So once you finalize, you need to validate. So it is required to formally validate the newly developed or improved standard test method. So that will fall under the validation. So in validation of analytical procedures, okay, there are several criteria in which the method need to pass. Okay, all of these, the method that you have done over here, it need to pass all of these criteria. Then only you can say that, oh, this method is validated, can be used. It can be used. It will give a good result. So in validation of analytical procedures, the first criteria that in which you have to fulfill is the precision, okay, and then you have accuracy, repeatability, robustness, selectivity, specificity, reproducibility, detection limit, linearity, and range. So we will go through this one by one. When we're talking about precision, precise, okay, from the word precise, we want to see your result obtained from the method that you are using. Can it get close to the true value? Okay, so for example here, we use this, what do you call that, the bow, for example. So this is considered to be accurate, precise, in which all of the reading is in the middle. This one, not accurate, precise, in which that all of it is located here, but it's not in the middle, which is the reading that you want. And this is considered to be accurate, which is near the middle, but all the four reading are not precise. Okay, they are not forming what you call similar readings. Okay, let's say you do a titration. The first titration you get could be 23 ml. Then the second one, you suddenly get 30. Okay, the third one, you get different value, 18. And the final one, you get maybe 25. So that is not considered to be precise. So precise meaning you get your result or the numbers that obtain are very similar. Okay, if you do the titration, there could be some difference. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. For example, if you do the titration, the first reading is 23, second one 22, the third one could be 23.5, fourth could be 24. So that is considered to be precise enough. Okay, so if the method that you are using to do the testing does not achieve or fulfill the precision, then you have to go back to step number 5, which is to optimize. So you have to rework or see which of these parameters that you need to change in order to achieve precision. Then the second one will be accuracy. So accuracy is the closeness of the obtained result with the true values, okay, or an accepted reference values and the values found. So here, actually this is the same, okay. So accurate, in the middle, all of it are close to the bullseye. But this one, precise, not accurate. This is considered to be accurate, but all four readings are, how to say, very dispersed, the reading, and this is considered to be not accurate and not precise at all. So for drug product, accuracy will be determined by application of the analytical procedure. to the synthetic mixtures. So in which that known amounts of analyte have been added within the range of procedures. And another thing is you will have to spike known amount of analyte into the excipients and calculating the percent recovered. So spiking meaning you add more to the formulation that you already have. Let's say the original formulation is 100 mg of any active ingredient. So you spike meaning you add another 50 mg, for example, to that formulation. So can the method detect that 50%? If it cannot detect, just give the same result, maybe 100 mg. So the method has to be reworked again. Okay, you have to be re-optimized. Repeatability, okay, has to be done as well. So this is a measure of precision under the same operating condition over a short interval of time. That is under normal operating condition. So you have to repeat the test. Okay, and the test has to be done in a short span of time. Let's say you have do one analysis using HPLC. So after a few in HPLC, the time taken could be for one injection or one analysis could be 30 minutes, for example. So maybe after another 10 minutes, you have to do it again to see whether you can get the same result. Or immediately after that, you straight away do another run. So that has to be checked in which that the result obtained can be repeatable under the same condition, meaning everything is the same lab, same instrument, same person that you are that is doing it. Okay, it must be the same person also. If you change to another person, so that cannot be how to say the criteria for repeatability has to be the same person we're doing it. So it is measured by making 6 sample determination at 100% concentration, or by preparing 3 sample at 80%, 100%, 120% concentration level. So meaning that the formulation that you are doing will be at this concentration. Okay, one is 100%, which is the exact same as the intended product. Another two could be highly higher, okay, or lower than that. Okay, the next one would be robustness. This is when you slightly make a little changes. Okay, here the keyword is deliberate. So let's say the method from HPLC just now requires the temperature of the column to be set at 40 degrees Celsius. You deliberately change to lower and also to higher. And by this, you will check whether the result or the peaks obtained still come out at the same retention time, and whether the area under the curve is still the same or not. So these are among things that that you can deliberately or how to say purposely change. Okay, selectivity. This one, if the method that you are using is able to separate and also resolve all of the components of a mixture and only detect that particular analyte that you are focusing, okay, qualitatively. So meaning that when you are doing the test and in the drug formulation, there are many things, but for this particular test, you just focusing on one particular analyte. So that method have to be selective. So it must be able to detect only that one particular analyte. So according to ASP, selectivity is defined as the method as its ability to measure accurately an analyte in the presence of interference, okay, such as synthetic precursors, excipients, enantiomers, if it is chiral or not, degradation products that may be expected to be present in sample matrix. So this is actually from earlier, the matrix effect. So we want to see whether that method can focus on the analyte. Specificity. So in terms of specificity, so the method determines or measures quantitatively the component of interest in the sample matrix without separation. So the samples are not, how to say, separated from the matrix. So restricted to quantitative measurement of one or more analyte. So it will be able to assess the analyte in the presence of components which may be expected to be present. So this include impurities, okay, that is present in the formulation itself, other degradants, and also the matrix. So this one, the method normally done by spiking the sample solution or the test solution with impurities. Okay, so the result obtained should be that the analyte can still be detected if more impurity is added, okay, to the test solution. Then you have this reproducibility. So this means that that same method that you are using can be done at another location. So it has to be done in a different environment, meaning different lab with different instruments. So let's say if you're using HPLC, you go to another lab with a different HPLC, you do the same test. So if it still get the same result, it gives you the same result, so that method can be said to be reproducible. Okay. So these are the term, okay, precision, repeatability, intermediate precisions, which I put in simplified table, but not all, okay. And the description is how many times you have to do the test. But all of this I did not put in greater detail because it will be very, very complicated. If I want to explain one by one the repeatability test, what the detailed method, so it will be one new topic. It needs one new topic for itself, but this is included in the introduction. Just enough that you know what is included in the validation. Okay, what types of criteria that you need to know would make the method that you have developed validated. And then this one is the second last, which is detection limit. So you need to know the lowest amount of analyte your sample can detect. So meaning that you have to make the sample dilute, more dilute. Let's say from 100 mg, you need to test at 10 mg, for example. Can it still be detected? Can let's say in a HPLC, normally the result will come out as a graph, okay, the chromatogram. So we want to see the peak. For 100 mg, for example, the peak will be very high, very visible. But let's say you try to lower the concentration, maybe to 10 mg, which is 10 times lower, can the peak still be identified? So that is the detection limit, or sometimes also called as LOD, which is limit of detection or limit of quantification. And then we have this linearity. So linearity is what that I mentioned in the standard, okay, the external standard, in which you do a standard curve, okay, of several different concentration. So it needs to form a linear graph which are having R value more than 0.98, for example. Okay, this value depend. Some references say 0.99 at least. Okay, so the R value have to be referred to the method that you're using, and the amount of the different concentration that you need to prepare, there should be at least 5. Okay, minimum 5 different concentration. The more, the better. Okay, if you want to produce or dilute maybe 6, 7, so that will produce greater accuracy for the linearity or the standard curve that you are preparing. And the last one would be in terms of range. So range is you want to know what is the lowest amount, that is limit of detection, and the how to say largest amount of analyte that you can detect. Okay, so this is like having the interval between the upper and lower concentration. So we want to know which range. Let's say the upper range from the normal is 100 mg, so you times 10, maybe 1000 mg, so that is the limit. So after that the quantification cannot be done, for example. So you have to identify the range of the test method that you are using. So that would be all on the method validation. So lastly, so some of the question which pharmaceutical analysis could answer. So what does pharmaceutical analysis can give you? Whether this can identify the compound, and can it detect impurities, and how much impurities that is present in your formulation. You can also check the product stability. Okay, so this one stability can be in the form of doing schedule testing. Okay, let's say you are producing maybe 1,000,000 tablets of let's say chloroquine, for example. So you have this 1,000,000 tablets, you cannot sell all to the market. Okay, you cannot sell all to the market. You have to keep some, okay, in which that you have to keep for observation, and the test needs to be done in the periodic. There is a schedule. Normally it is done in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, and then 18 months, 24th month, or 2 years. If the drugs expire in 3 years, then after 24 it will go to 30 and then 36. So the purpose of doing this is, let's say for one of the tests it's assay. So assay is to check the concentration or the purity of the active ingredient itself. So the stated amount or the parameter set should be, let's say, not less than 99% of the original content. So after maybe 18 months, for example, when you do the test, you notice that the values has become less than maybe 80%. Okay, the assay result obtained is 75% purity. So that is the only active ingredient that is present in the tablet after 18 months. So what you should do as a manufacturer or a drug manufacturer, you have to notify or the users, okay, and recall back all of the product that you have sold. So normally they will have a batch number for easier tracing, because what will happen is if original concentration or you call that strength is 100 mg, but after 18 months it has become less than 80%, which is could be 75% strength. So doctors may prescribe patient to eat 2 tablets or 1 tablet. So end up patient may be taking lower dosage than suggested. So patient end up being not recovering from their ailments, and doctors will keep on prescribing maybe higher dosage, but actually it is not required to have high dosage. It's just that the dosage that is in the actual tablet is not the same. So that is what why stability is very important. And then rate of drug release is in terms of dissolution testing. You can do dissolution in our analytical lab. Okay, there is a dissolution bath in which that you can mimic. Okay, the purpose of doing dissolution testing is to mimic the condition in our body where you want the drug to be released. Okay, whether it is in our stomach, so that is considered to be immediate, or maybe you want it to be released after 4 hours, so that will happen in our intestine probably. So depending on the type of drug, you can make sure the rate of drug release. And then the identity, purity determination, concentration of drug present in plasma or biological fluid. This is after patient have taken the drugs. Okay, you need to check the amount of drug present in the blood. Normally, this one will happen in hospital, okay, not in pharmaceutical industries. Okay, but this what do you call that, test can also be done in what you call as biological equivalent study, BE. For any product, any drug product to be approved by NPRA, National Pharmaceutical Regulatory Agency, it needs to pass a BE study, bioequivalent study, in which that you have to call volunteers, okay, which is people. They need to consume the drug for a certain period of time, let's say 7 days. Okay, they have to stay in a hospital for 7 days and be given the drugs, and their blood sample will be taken maybe 2 hours or 3 hours after taking the drug. So this has to be done, and it needs to pass. If it doesn't meet the specification, then you have to rework everything, okay, including the formulation and the testing method and so on. Okay, so it is not easy to get the approval from our NPRA, okay, because their how to say specification is very very strict. Okay, they do their work. It's not like simply giving approval to any drug. Okay, so it needs to pass all of this. And this one is the physical properties like pKa, solubility, and so on. So where does the pharmaceutical analysis involve? Okay, so since you all are going to be a pharmacist, I believe most of you will end up in hospital or clinical, or maybe in community pharmacies. But maybe one or two of you may end up being an industrial pharmacist, meaning working in companies. Okay, like some of your seniors. Okay, I think one of my mentee did her PRP, okay, in pharmaceutical industries. Okay, she didn't go for clinical PRP. So you need to familiarize yourself with some of the flows involved, okay, in our pharmaceutical industries. So analysis will happen mostly in quality control, QC, and also in R&D. So research and development. Okay, so the first step normally will be in R&D. Okay, a team will develop a formulation. So let's say you want to develop a new drugs. A drugs by innovator has finished their patent. So like earlier when I was working in Pharma Niaga, the drug Viagra, okay, just finished their 30 years patent. So after 30 years, that formulation can, how to say, be copied. Okay, you can copy, but you cannot copy exactly. You can copy and modify some of the ingredient so that you can sell. So this is what we call as generic lah. Okay, so what they did is uh, the R&D team has to reformulate from the original recipe just now, and then the analytical team will do will develop a test method. So this is where the pharmaceutical analysis comes in, the method development plan, and then the validation. So all will be done in the R&D first, okay, and after the product has been registered with KKM, okay, NPRA, then only will go into production. After production, then only QC testing will be done. So QC mainly like this, they will done routine testing, okay, and the test method will be developed by the research and development. So uh, for you, I mean like for pharmacists, in pharmaceutical industry environment, you can be placed in various section. So you can be in the production line, okay, a production pharmacist. You can also be the formulation or formulator. You are the one who doing the formulation. Okay, this falls under your SUTIX. Or you can also be the analyst, the one who is doing the testing. Okay, I have friends who are a pharmacist but end up being the analytical team who are doing the testing. Okay, so it depends on you actually which part you prefers, or you can just be in what you call that supply chain or in regulatory. So your post is not limited. Okay, your post is not limited. It's just that you have an you call that extra knowledge of being a pharmacist. Okay, but it can be applied actually anywhere. You can be in quality assurance. You can be in QC as well if you want. But mostly, I found that they will be placed in either production or as a formulator. Okay, for a pharmacist. But if you did your PRP in industries, you will be rotate through several departments. I think 3 months, 3 months, 3 months like that. After 3 months, you will go to another department after 3 months, or maybe after 6 months. After finishing your PRP, then you will get to choose to stay in which department. So quality system of pharmaceutical industry. So you have your QC, okay, validation, QA, and then only product can be released to the market. Okay. So the importance of QC or quality control. So what it do is it will assure proper design. It can monitors and control all of the manufacturing procedures to confirm the sterility and quality of products. So drugs, these are something that people will consume. So everything must be checked. Okay, it must be sterile. Uh, this includes having reputable management system, very good quality of raw materials that you are using, okay, in terms of the formulation, upholding control operating procedures. Okay, this is standard operating procedures. Normally, if you go into a lab, pharmaceutical analysis lab, there will be an SOP that you have to follow, which is the standard operating procedures. Like for instrument, for example, an IR machine or UV machine, at the side of each instrument, by right, there should be a standard operating procedure, meaning that anybody who wants to use that instrument, just by reading it, they will be able to understand and operate the machine without any help from other person. So that is the purpose of having an SOP. So the SOP also have to be detailed. It cannot be just switch on the machine, put the sample, and then take the reading. It has to be very precise. Where to switch on the machine? Where is the what do you call that? The switch. Where is the switch? And then to place the sample, where is the sample holder? And then to run the test using the instrument, where normally they will be connected to a PC and then a software. So which button to click? So that has to be finely detailed out in an SOP. So identifying product deviations. So if the products obtained are having different specification, so you need to identify that by using QC, quality control, and also to maintain reliable laboratories. So this falls under the ISO 17025 or 17025. So labs will be required to have one ISO 17025, in which that documentation have to be done for a lot of things. Okay, basically like calibration of instrument, okay, every 6 months, and then record of usage, logbook, who used the weighing balance, for example, last. So you need to write their name. So that is among some of the criteria for ISO certification. So component of QC, you have the records, sampling, okay, batch inspection, and also sampling. So this is done so that the sample taken will represent the gross sum of the batch. Okay, let's say you have 1,000,000 tablets in a drum. You cannot just take from the top. If you take from the top,
Sir, bunyi kipas.
sorry?
Bunyi kipas.
Oh
Kacau.
ya ke? Kuat ke? Okay, sorry. Saya jauhkan sikit. Okay, clear?
Yes.
Okay. So, in terms of the sampling, you cannot just take, normally it will be placed in very big drum, okay, the tablets. So you cannot just simply take from the top. So you have to take some from the bottom, okay, some from the middle. So normally that is how sampling are done, to make sure that it represents the whole batch. Because if you take from the top, that means the batch, the tablets that is on the top is the one that is towards the end of the production. Okay, the one at the bottom is the first tablet to be produced. So this has to be done properly. Okay, and then your QC labs, the instrument, the personnel, okay, the people inside is also important. Okay, all of the analysts or the one that is going to do the test needs to be certified, need to be competent. So they will be like, not like a test, they will do some standard testing of sample and see whether they get the acceptable result or not. Okay, and then retain sample, this one is under stability. Okay, stability that I said earlier. Then I say finished product, this is the same. And then validation. Here is I've put as well the differences between QC and also QA. So you don't get confused between quality assurance and quality control. Quality assurance is a whole sum. It is for the whole manufacturing plant, for example. Whereas quality controls, basically just what happened in the labs. Okay, so in QC or QA, a set of activities for ensuring quality in the process by which products are developed, while QC is just ensure the quality of the products, okay, just the product, which is the formulation of the drug itself. Okay, while QA prevent defects. It focus on the process used to make the product, while QC, the main task is to identify the defects, okay, and maybe they need to correct. But sometimes the correction has to be done by other department, for example, okay, like re-engineering or maybe technical. When you go into industry, you will know not there will be a specific team, okay, to deal with problematic products. And then objective is to improve development and test processes so that defects don't arise when products being developed, while QC, the objective is to identify the defects, okay, before it is released. The word release meaning to be sell off to market lah. While QA as a managerial tool and company based, while QC is a corrective tool and lab based. So this is mainly to say restricted to lab only. Okay, so that is all on the introduction of pharmaceutical analysis. Okay, we have covered the validation, the method development, okay, the validation